Morning, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome everybody here today to our panel on sticky floors and glass ceilings. My name is Naveen Peters. I'm the Vice President of Development and Alumni Engagement at the University of Calgary, and I'm delighted to be joined by three exceptional, fearless, talented women who are pioneers in their field and their industry to join us for a conversation. And so I'll first introduce Professor Rebecca Sullivan at my far right, professor at the University of Calgary. Dawn Farrell, our alumna of the Haskayne School of Business and president and CEO of TransAlta Corporation. And Manjeet Minhouse, who is the co-founder and co-owner of Minhouse Breweries, Distilleries, and Wineries, and also a dragon on CBC's Dragon's Den. Do people often introduce you as a dragon?
Yes. Yeah. Initially, sometimes.
Initially.
my little daughters introduced me as a dragon. To their friends.
Well, that sounds like a good claim to fame. My mummy is a dragon. So today we're talking about women in leadership. And today's workforce is a complex environment that can be very challenging for ambitious career women. Career paths aren't straightforward or necessarily equitable for women in Canada and the United States. And it's critical to understand both the societal and workplace barriers that can prevent or hinder successful women from climbing, whether it's that corporate ladder, that sense of work-life balance, or to achieve their and societal's full potential. So this session, we will explore and hear from our panelists on different strategies, different experiences, and some advice from these very accomplished and talented women to my right. So there will be an opportunity for open questions. You have some cue cards on your desk, so feel free to write down a question that you may have. Raise it in the air, and my colleague Dana will gather them throughout the session. But first, I'll turn it over to Rebecca for the first question. Talk to us about what some of the research says on women in leaderships and trends in women's career advancement within the workplace.
Thank you so much, Nuvin, and thank you all for coming out this morning. Okay, I think it's important on a Saturday morning to begin with some good news. So the good news is, of course, that participation in the workforce has never been higher, and in leadership, and particularly in post-secondary. So we're going to see those trends going up. So now here's a little bit of the bad news. Some of the longitudinal data, and most of this is coming out of the United States, is suggesting that millennial men, so the youngest generation of the workforce, are expecting a more traditional partnership, are expecting their wives to step back from their careers when it comes time for family or other obligations, and are expecting their career to take the priority in the household. So that's something we're not doing right. We don't have comparable data for Canada, but I can say that if you just look straight up on Stats Canada, what you see is the first 10 years of employment, we actually see some pretty good gender parity. We see pretty good salary parity and opportunity parity. 10 years into careers, we start to see things fall, and they never pick back up again. So while we don't have the explicit data in Canada, we have a suggestion here that 10 years into their careers, women are stepping back. And we need to investigate why, and we need to change that conversation.
Thank you, Rebecca. Why don't I turn it over to Dawn to perhaps explain or talk to us a bit about what or how TransAlta manages and ensures women have opportunities for upward mobility within the corporation.
Thank you, and thanks, Rebecca, for that. I need to connect with Rebecca because of some of the work that I'm doing on entrepreneurship. But At TransAlta, I mean, it really helps because the CEO is a woman. Makes a big difference. And I'll tell you how that makes a big difference in a number of ways. Now, the CEO is a woman because of the men that ran the company before me. So if it wasn't for their sponsorship and their trust and their help, I wouldn't have made it to the senior team. And that was both, people I work for at TransAlta. So it does take enlightened males to pave the way for women to leadership at this point. That will change in the future, but that is certainly true today. Being a female CEO, one of the great advantages that I have is that when we set out to have 50% women on our board, I can actually go find the women. And today, there's a lot of talk about that, and then you listen to the headhunters, and they bring the same lists of males, for you to choose from for your board. I know every woman in Canada, everywhere, and so I bring my list of women. And I could literally today, I could ensure that every single board in Canada had women representation in it because I happen to know who all those women are. So that's a big, big advantage. In terms of having women on our senior team, today we're 40%. We've been as high as 50%, but we had one of our operating women leave. The big issue there is making sure that our young women don't pick careers at the edges of the corporation. So I spend a lot of time coaching women into operations, and some of our women here are here today, and they know that, right, Bianca? We look at our engineers and say, get into operations, go run a plant, and then we try to bring them up in through the organization that way. But as well, the other key thing for me is making sure that gender is not an issue at TransAlta. So I work really, really hard so that it doesn't really matter if you're male or female. It's about meritocracy. And that is not to say that we always pick the best and the best is a male. It's not that at all. It means that in the meetings, that the women have the same voice as the men, and that the respect is there in the organization so that all voices can be heard and all voices are honored. And that's just not a male-female thing. That's an introvert-extrovert thing. That's a technical, you have your technical engineering people, your operations people, your financial people. They all speak different languages. So focusing on people having voices and focusing, and I do go out in the field and I talk to my guys and I go, okay, and Bianca doesn't know this, but I actually was out when she worked in hydro, and I said to one of the old guys, okay, what's it like to work with Bianca? And he goes, it's great. She's fantastic. She gets everything done. And I said, is it a problem working with a woman? And he goes, send me 10 more of them, So really, it's also about reshaping how the men think as well.
Thanks so much, Dawn. So on that note of either reshaping or reframing some of the perceived male biases or stereotypes, Manjeet, in your experience, what strategies do you have for women either within your industry or women who seek out your mentorship and guidance to help navigate in traditionally male-dominated workforces?
Good morning. Thanks. Yeah, that's an interesting one because I feel like I've always been in male-dominated industries. I did engineering as an education, started here at the U of C and then finished at the U of R. And then I got into the spirits and the beer business, which is even more male-dominated. So they seem to attract me for some reason. But I do think that there's a couple strategies. And I don't think they're necessarily strategies in business. I think they are life strategies. For me, first and foremost, I think women should stop apologizing. I think we should stop saying, I'm sorry, excuse me, is it all right? I think those terms should be out of our vocabulary. We need to stand up for what we believe in, and we're not on a quest to be likable. A lot of people, when they watch me on Dragon's Den previous 2 seasons, and our 3rd season starts next week, they're like, you're so tough. I'm like, no, I'm not. I am just a businesswoman. If I was a male, if my brother was sitting up there, you might actually think he's kind of soft because he wasn't tougher. And so it's business. It doesn't really matter whether I'm a male or a female sitting showing up there in the den or in the boardroom. So I really do believe that women have to stop apologizing. Also, I think women have to bring their appetite to the table. You have to be looking for new experiences and adventures, as our male counterparts are, in order to climb that ladder, grow your career, or grow your business for that matter. To stay status quo in any industry, any business, as an entrepreneur especially, is a recipe for getting lost and losing in the long term. Everybody has to constantly be pivoting and innovating and looking for those new adventures and experiences. And then I think also we need to embrace the F word as women, not that F word, feminism. Because thank you. I don't think feminism is a bad word. I don't know when it became a bad word. To me, feminism is just advocating for all people's rights, whether they be women, men, based on religion, sexuality, age. So to me, feminism doesn't mean what a lot of men think it means. It just means standing up for your rights. And if you're a woman, okay, you're a feminist then. So I think that those are great strategies to have not only in your business, but for you as an individual.
Terrific. So I love the energy. I love the positive strategies. But how do you navigate in, if Rebecca, if you're correct in terms of the research, how do you seize a spot at the table if you may not be wanted at the table?
Well, first off, I have to thank Dawn and Manjeet, because how you seize a spot at the table is when the head of the company invites you to sit down. And that's on the leadership. They need to be looking around at the table and figuring out who they haven't invited. But the reality is that often women and other marginalized people are simply not invited. And it can be a fraught experience to take your seat that is rightfully yours and to look around the table and see you're not welcome. So I think a huge strategy there for you sitting at the table is to not get up, but to not lie to yourself. If you are seeing that hostility, that unwelcoming culture, be aware that it's there. Acknowledge that it's not because you don't deserve to be there. There's larger forces at work. And that will help give you the fortitude to keep your seat. If you pretend this isn't happening to you, and that it's your fault, or that you didn't take the seat in just the right way, you weren't nice enough about taking your seat, you weren't soft enough about taking your seat, you didn't ask and apologize before taking your seat, then that's when you just start to break yourself down. And that's when you start to step away. And that's where we see 10 years into apologies and softness resulting in just walking away completely. So take your seat, but know that not everybody wants you there, but you deserve to be there anyway.
Dawn, did you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I always love these forums because I never know exactly what I'm going to say because, it's kind of 57 years of experience and you start to reflect when you're in the moment. The other thing is I always sound much more sure of myself than I actually am. So if I sound like I really have answers, I really don't. But, there's something about, and Manjeet, you should comment on this as well, there's something about the way that your dad interacts with you as a young woman that determines whether or not you'll take your seat at that table. And I think about my father. He's a tradesman and a beekeeper and a hunter and a fisherman, and he literally tortured me my whole life, I had to go fishing or shoot a bow and arrow or sit in a tree stand and wait for a bear to come by or something like that. But, when I got into university and I got to the corporate table, I think the men what they would have said about me is, she doesn't even know that we didn't invite her to the table because I didn't. I don't think I ever have. I don't think I've ever, I was in a meeting yesterday, a very high level meeting with lots of CEOs and politicians yesterday. It was all male. It's just me. I never said, oh my God, I'm the only woman. those guys, I'm sure, never said, how did she get to the table? It was just crystal clear that I was there. And so there's something about the way in which the fathers interact with the daughters that give them the confidence to be at the table and not even question their right to be there. And I don't know if that's your experience as well.
Ditto, exactly my experience for sure. And for me, actually, even a step further. So I am East Indian, I'm Sikh. I'm born and raised here in Calgary, but my dad is born and raised in India. And so he came here. My mom is from Vancouver Island when they got married at age 21 in 1976. And he came here and did engineering again. And when I was born, the same thing. I'm older. My brother is a year and a half younger than I. And many of you will probably know or have heard of East Indian and Asian culture. The women do not get treated the same as the men, whether the child is older or not. But my dad always was the opposite, to be quite honest. He always supported me, believed in me. I got more freedom than my brother, to be quite honest, much to his dismay. But yes, my dad absolutely was my advocate to begin with and always pushed me first to do engineering when I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into the medical field. And so he absolutely pushed me in that direction. Then afterwards, too, when I wanted to go into business, my mom was a supporter, but not nearly as much as my dad. My mom said, no, you go to school and get a job and then have the family. And for sure, she had that idea in her mind as the way I should, have a career and then be a mom. But my dad never believed that for me, always supported me, and actually was my mentor when I would come home and cry because I was the only woman. They would expect me to pour the beers rather than talk about them during the meetings. It was very hard. So he became really good at teaching me how to give myself pep talks. Which I did a lot the first 10 years. But yes, I would say my dad very instrumental in making me believe and helping me believe in myself to sit at the table whether I was invited or not. Yeah.
So I think we've touched upon an interesting concept, and that's the role of fathers in the raising of their children, of both their sons and daughters. I'd like to continue along that line of thought and explore women as mothers and navigating the career challenges of balancing it all, whether it's
of what it means to be managing personal and professional. So yes, there's raising children. I'm a parent. I think we're all in that boat. But then there's cycles of elder care, and there's really interesting data about community work and the kind of caring labor that women in particular are expected to provide to their neighborhood and to their community. So let's think about this in a broad way. And one of the things that has really struck me is from a colleague, mentor, just an amazing leader. So I'm going to give a shout out to Shanine Spear, who's the Vice President of Talent and Diversity at WestJet. And Shanine talks about careers as a lattice, not a ladder. And just changing that mindset for everyone opens up mentorship and sponsorship opportunities. This recognition that it's not a straight way up, and if you've got to step aside a little bit, go sideways a little bit for a while, it doesn't mean you aren't going back up eventually. And so I think we can all do that. Parents, absolutely. It starts young. Children, we see little girls are streamed out of STEM by elementary school. It's over by the time we're in there encouraging them to go to STEM. We're too late. So it's parents, it's teachers, it's community. We all have to question our own, what I'll call gender normative behaviors and expectations, because we're losing the children before we've even begun to have this conversation with them.
Yeah, so I mean, the life balance for women working is it's a 1,000,000-hour conversation, right? It'll take more than what we have here, for sure. But I mean, for me, I was really lucky. I picked the right life partner to do my life with, and my husband is phenomenal. There's nobody on the planet who who could have put up with me the way he does, and who has been as supportive, and he stood aside. So it's interesting. The data is that the men in the States want the women to stand aside. I wonder if that's a bit of a recognition that it is really a lot of work to raise children, and that it is almost impossible to have two very powerful careers. And in our household, we could not do that. So Brendan, he always took he stood aside. I did step aside and took lateral moves. I did my whole career depending on the age of my children. But I also I wasn't one of these helicopter mothers. Like, I was not a very good mom. Like, my daughters, they're 29 and 30, and they sit around and they talk about how all these mothers would go to these parent-teacher interviews, and they'd make lunches and they'd do all this stuff. And Jessica goes, I remember the day that Mom told me she'd never go to another parent-teacher interview again, that it was completely up to me. If I wanted to be good in school, I could go. And she said, and there I am. I'm in grade 5, and I'm thinking, oh my God, was that grade 5? I thought that was grade 7, you know? And she said, I'm in front of the teacher going, well, my mom won't come. She said that I'm responsible, so I guess you need to tell me what I need to do to improve myself. And I'm thinking, awesome, you know? And when the teachers would call me and say, your children aren't doing homework, I'd go, why are you calling me? I'm busy. Call them. They're the ones that are supposed to do the homework. So, you know, you have to create it, right, as you do it. And it's really messy, and there's really messy moments. And, you know, our house we ran the worst house on the street and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, it's just, what do you want? I wanted a career. And it was my father. The day I almost quit was, you know, we're in Dairy Queen at 10 o'clock at night, after we've been all over the place looking for runners or something like this, and at the bank. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the girls and I'm going, this is it. I am done. I am quitting. And Jessie goes, she's like 10, she goes, oh, Mom, you couldn't quit. You're like Mulan. And Mulan is you know, I guess that meant you're a woman in men's clothes or a man in women's clothes. I don't know what it was. But anyway, and then I followed that up by phoning my father and going, I'm done. You know, I'm feeding my children hamburgers and fries, and I can't make supper. And he goes, oh, for God's sake, if anybody can figure it out, you can. And that was it. You just keep going.
Yeah, on the work-life balance question, really, it's bullshit, to be honest. Like, there is no such thing. There is only 24 hours in the day. I have 2 young girls, 4 and 7, and I have an amazing husband too. But he's an entrepreneur himself, and he has a very big business too. So we understand each other's pressures. But for me, I have an amazing support team. And that support team is at home, with family, with friends, with paid help. It's a combination of all 3, and at the office, both. And so for me, that support team really has helped me. And I determined very early on, after having my first daughter, that it takes a village to raise a family. And you know what? It's okay if I am not there for everything. They will learn from grandparents, from aunts and uncles. It's just about, and friends. I learned very early on to ask for help. I think many of us as women think that we need to do it all in order to be great moms, great wives, great daughter-in-laws, great daughters, and like I said, I have great sister-in-laws who do all that. Unfortunately, well, not me, and it wasn't my priority, but everybody knew that. And so I think that my daughters already have a great upbringing and a more diverse upbringing because there's so many people involved in their lives, and they know where Mom is. Even this morning, they're like, where are you going, Mom? And I said, I told them where I'm going. Oh, you're going to do blah, 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 my 4-year-old says to me. And I said, yeah, and I'll see you after skating class. So it's one of those things that they have to be a part of also where you are, to know that you're not leaving them, that you're coming back. And for me, it's been great that I do have 2 young girls that I'm trying to get them to experience all the great things that I do, whether it be with philanthropy, my businesses, my TV life, whatever it may be. So I really do think that everybody has to also get rid of the guilt. My older daughter was a year old, and I decided, you know what? I am getting rid of this everyday guilt that I come home with, that I missed ballet, I missed playgroup, I wasn't with the moms and made the fresh applesauce. It's okay, somebody else did, but it got made and they got fed. It's okay.
And you can buy applesauce.
Well, there you go. Yes, Yes. And so it was one of those things that I determined for me to be the happiest, I need to be where I am in the moment every single day. So if I'm at soccer practice with my girls or just sitting at home reading, I'm not thinking about the meetings that I missed. And vice versa. When I'm at the meetings, I'm traveling for work, I'm not thinking about all the stuff I missed at home and why their hair looks like that when they're Skyping me. And it's just, it's just a matter, I think, of letting go of the guilt, especially as a mom, but also living in the moment and knowing that you have a happy family and a happy workplace if you are happy inside. And I determined that very early on. So I have no regrets, and that's how I live every day.
I think that's phenomenal advice, and I think that that extends beyond simply parenthood or we as women navigating the challenges of whether it's guilt or work-life balance or being that exceptional employee who can do it all with a smile on our face. And you've talked about cultivating that village, and I'm wondering if each of you could comment on how can we as a society, we as women, cultivate that village, whether it's on the home front, in our places of employment, within our communities. What does that look like to you?
Well, I really think that Donna Majid already said it. It's, and it's very similar to taking your place at the table. Get up and leave the table too without guilt, Take it for yourself and acknowledge, this is how I'm running my life in concert with all the people that I need in my life with me, looking out for their needs. We talk about kids. My kid right now is somewhere upstairs. I dumped him on a chair with his Nintendo DS. And it's like, don't get lost, don't get kidnapped, I'll come get you in an hour. And I believe him. He'll be fine. He'll be fine. Everyone will be fine if you're fine. And I think that's really important advice. You can't be in charge of everyone and everything, and you've got to put yourself in the equation.
I think some of the, again, I kind of go back to, when I come to university, all the memories of being here and the classes and the professors and the advice that they got just starts flooding into my brain. And I took an organizational development course in probably 1982 from a professor who I have no idea who he was. I just remember he was a big, heavy guy from downtown. And we had a debate in the class about if you got to the top of an organization, would you still be a woman? In 1982. And I argued vociferously that yes, you would. And he and the whole class argued that no, you wouldn't. You'd have to become a man to make it in a man's world. So I was very determined coming out of that argument, because I like to win my arguments. I was very determined that and I didn't know what I was going to do with my career. It's not like I said, oh gee, and I'm going to be a CEO and watch me. I was like, and I hope I get a job. I was like looking for my first job. But I always remembered that debate. And as I went through the organization, I was always determined to stay a woman. So the answer to your question, I think, is women really do have to stay women, and they have to really, really support each other in what their passions are. And there are very, very many women that do amazing jobs in their homes and in the communities, and there are women that are doing great work in government and in business. They're all different. They all do it differently. But I think if women can really provide a strong base of showing how it can be done, and then we also have to really respect the men for who they are, because men are not women and women are not men. And it's never been more apparent to me than now. When you're a female leader and you're working with the male energy, and you're working with the female energy, and you're working with males that have more female energy and females that have more male energy, and you're trying to figure out how to get all of that to do something well, you just have to be really respectful of who people are and let them be who they are. But also, I just think it's really critically important that women support one another and aren't critical of one another.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, that when you get to the level of where we're at and many other women, do you become a man? So interesting. One of the most, not vicious, but one of the most tenacious arguments that I had in recent memory was
My
3
arguments
years
are
ago.
vicious.
It was 3 years ago when I got, after I was selected by CBC and the executive producers at Dragon's Den to be on the panel. And so, great, all the other things were worked out, and we were picking wardrobe with my stylist. And they had gotten a stylist, and we were going, okay, great. And they brought, I came from Calgary a week before filming my first year, and they had about 50 different outfits, and every single outfit had pants. And I looked at them and I said, well, I'm not even going to try these on. And all of the producers sitting there, the executives, many of them women also, but men, they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, if you know anything about me, I wear dresses and skirts. I wear pants. I live in Calgary. But I really advertise as much as I can that I'm a woman, and I love dressing up. I love fashion. That is me. And so I said, listen, one of the great things and the reason why I signed up and every other dragon before me has is because you give us the leeway to be who we are, say what we want. This is unscripted television. And that's exactly who I'm going to be. And so the argument went on for days, literally the day before filming. And I said, I am not sitting up there unless I can wear a dress. And they said, no, you know what? There's 20 cameras on our set. All the videographers, the editors, and most of them men, but they all say, no, it's hard to film. We have to worry about angles. We have to worry about editing. And the other women that are, and men around you, the stylists have to worry about this and that. Just so much to worry about when you're in a dress. And I said, I don't care. I am going to wear a dress. Otherwise, you know what? You can find somebody else to sit up there. And we did literally until the day before. And then I went out and got 5 dresses and said, listen, I'm happy with all 5 of these. Pick which one you want. And so my first season, and I said, and none of them were black. And I said, because I wear color. And so they picked, and I picked red. And it was a beautiful, bright red dress. And right after, when the season started, there were so many articles written about, and so many discussions on many other shows about Manjeet wearing red dress. And I couldn't believe it in this day and age. This is only 3 seasons ago, that I had to fight to wear a dress and be a woman. I am a woman, and there was no hiding that. And I was representing, I felt, not only myself, but other women who wanted to dress how they wanted to dress. So the last 2 seasons, and including this season and every other season, I guarantee you that I'll be on the show, I will be wearing a dress or a skirt, because it's something that I couldn't believe I had to fight for in this day and age, but I did. And I'm very proud that in the end that I won that battle. I couldn't believe that it's still a battle in this day and age, but it is, in order to feel who we are. And so in closing, I'm just going to quote former Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, and she said, there is a special place in hell for those women who don't help other women. And I totally, totally agree.
Rebecca, please.
I just wanted to reflect on what I've been hearing. I mean, we are looking at 2 incredibly successful people, but also incredibly successful women who have so much to teach us. But I also want us to reflect a little bit on the battles, the stupid, silly, useless, time-consuming, exhausting, mentally and emotionally fatiguing battles that they have to wage over issues that don't come up for a lot of men. And that, I think, is something that we really have to reflect upon. I think it's fantastic, and I encourage my students and applaud the women who do take the time to fight back and are empowered by that fighting back and empowered by the win. We need those wins, but we also need to acknowledge that there are a lot of people out there who can't keep that constant fighting spirit going, and we are asking for a lot more from women than we are asking from men. And we need to stop expecting them to take this crap and testing them all the time to see if they have the fortitude to fight back against a sexist system. We just need to stop the sexist system.
I want to switch gears for a moment because, Dawn, you've been a member of the Canada-US Council for the Advancement of Women Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders since February. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, so that is a group of women, both here in Canada and in the United States. I think there's 10 of us all together. And what we're doing is we're trying to do our part to think about how to continue to advance where women are at. We have a working group, and we're working on a number of pillars, looking at things like in procurement. Are there ways to ensure that women-owned businesses, get equal shots? The pillar I'm working on is entrepreneurship, and it's actually the wrong pillar for me because I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a person who came up through a large corporation and runs a large corporation, and there's a different kind of sensibility that you need to be able to do that. You're entrepreneurial, sort of, but not the same way that you're entrepreneurial. So I'm going to be phoning you to find out what to do about this pillar, because what's the research that we've been doing is really perplexing. Like it's really quite disturbing, and it's I don't think at the heart of it, honestly, is a sexist system. There is something that happens. So women do really well in school. They're at the top of the class. They're at the top of they're in the top of the classes in university. They come out. They get some of the best jobs. They all compete equally with the guys. But there's something that happens where the guys are more comfortable going out and starting businesses. And the research shows that not only are they more comfortable starting businesses, they're more comfortable raising capital. They're more likely to get capital. There's some really interesting studies that show the bias of the capital providers, but even that I think is overcomable. Women tend to start businesses that are more domesticated and small, they lifestyle type businesses, not beer businesses that you can expand globally and make into huge, massive businesses. They don't think about making massive global businesses. And it's a very small number of women that actually go into entrepreneurship. So that's my pillar, and we're doing some work on it, trying to figure out what kind of response there is. I still think, and it's a politically incorrect response, to say, well, actually, and I talk to my guys at work, the traders and the engineers, and I'll say to them, how are you guys thinking about this for your 16-year-old girls? Like, what are you doing to make sure that when they come out, that they think that they have more options than just becoming a doctor or a lawyer? That if they become an engineer or a lawyer, they can also become an entrepreneur. And how are we building that confidence so that women actually make some of those choices? Because as we all know, entrepreneurship is at the heart of what makes our economies really come together. I was really disturbed. I'm on the Business Council for Canada, and I'm part of the selection committee for adding new CEOs. Business Council of Canada has 165 members. There's about 10 women. And we were looking at bringing in entrepreneurial businesses. So I'm going to get your name on that list. And it was all men who had just recently started businesses that are now worth between $300 and $1 billion. There were no women. And so it's very perplexing, and I don't know what the answer is, and there's work to do, and we're trying to figure out how we can make our contribution. So what do I do?
Yeah, that's
I need help.
I don't know. Yeah, that's I'm at a loss for words. It doesn't really happen very often, but it is. It's a tough, and I agree with everything that you said. Unfortunately, it is interesting that I think that women dream for sure, but they don't dream big enough, and a lot of times that does stifle their growth as far as their business goes. But I also believe that it's about getting involved in the community and around around us in others' lives too. I really believe in mentorship, and I think that as entrepreneurs, the ones that are successful, men or women in any industry, I think that that's how you grow a sense of entrepreneurship in any company, first of all, because you do have to have that sense too. But in the
But
larger
what's
workplace,
different about you? Why are you different? Sorry, I have to take over your panel.
no problem.
Like, what is different about you? What has caused you to say, okay, we're going to start here? What is it?
Well, yeah, I'm not really that sure, but I would say
The
that first
answer
and
is,
foremost,
I'm awesome. That's what you say.
but for me, I think that it is about dreaming big. It's never good enough for me. That can be a good thing or a bad thing for sure. But for me, it's never enough. People always ask me what's next, and I say I have no idea. But I can tell you one thing: we're the 9th largest brewery in the world. There's 8 spots to go. I'm not retiring tomorrow. I'm not giving up this. I don't think I've made it ever. I'm always chasing the next big thing, the next, million cases of beer being sold, the next country. So I think it is that inner drive to continuously challenge yourself and grow yourself, but also knowing that you can do that with a support team behind you, to know that not everything else is going to fall apart when I'm away for a week or when all these other things are happening in my life. So it really does, the confidence and the self-confidence for me for sure comes with that, having my brother by my side also. So I think that that's a big important thing that you brought up too, that how do the men contribute to not only women, but especially women being confident and getting a seat at that table. It is the men have to realize that too. And I give 100% kudos to my brother. We are partners in everything that we do. A lot of times lately he puts me in front, but in the beginning he was the one in all of our beer commercials, some of you might remember, and he was the one in the media. And I was totally okay with that. I was behind the scenes a bit more. But it comes with a partnership, I believe, whether it be at home, at the office, wherever that is. And if that's a partnership with a woman, great. Or in my case, with my brother, who's a guy. And so it is about testing each other, but also being there for each other with those successes and those failures. And trust me, we've had a bunch of failures too in the last 18 years. And it's about having that support to say, it's okay. Let's go do that. Let's pick ourselves up and do it again, and not having that blame game that I listen to my intuition a lot. I tell him that all the time too. I'm like, you don't have it, I do. So you know what? We're gonna listen to what I want to do today, and vice versa. So it's not that it's always successful and that it works out, but there is that partnership, and I know that whatever happens, good or bad, that it's going to be okay as far as the business side of things go. And it goes to when I was having my first daughter, I told him, I don't know if I'm going to come back. I don't know how this is going to be. I've never been a mom. I've heard horror stories both ways, but I've heard great things too. I don't know if she's going to go to anybody else. I don't know if I'm going to be able to separate myself from her. And after 2 weeks, I was like, I can't change diapers anymore. I need to come back to the office. But she was also great. And my brother was okay with that. He said, it's okay. You know what? I will handle it. I'll take it over. It's okay. And so I had that support team, which really I believe has been the key for me to have that confidence in order to do what I want to do.
We have some fantastic questions from the audience, and I want to be sure to save some time for that. So the first for Rebecca, we're here on the University of Calgary campus. We have 173,000 UCalgary alumni. We've talked about educating women and encouraging them to pursue opportunities at a very young age. But what is the responsibility of the university to cultivate that next generation of women leaders?
I would have to say, the university it's not just the classroom, and I love the term cultivate, because it's the whole culture, it's the whole environment, it's the built environment, it's the leadership modeling, it is, yes, also the classroom. And the job of a university isn't just, and I'm going to say it is partly, to help build a set of viable professional skills, a foundation, because whatever we teach you is going to be out of date by the time you graduate. It's just the way the world works. So to create that foundation of professional capacities, but it's also to create ethical citizens, and we can do better at that level. And part of ethical citizenship is how you behave at the boardroom table, is how you respond to your partner when it comes time to discuss work-life balance, which is never in balance. And I think we need to do, I think we have an opportunity to do more, and we're really lucky here at the University of Calgary because we do have that model. I know this sounds a little much, but I really mean that. In our executive leadership here at the University of Calgary, we are modeling it and we are walking the walk and talking the talk. So, for example, we are currently building an innovation and entrepreneurial hub. We have this amazing support from the Hunter family. And as part of that conversation, we've already begun a conversation about what I'll call a diversity audit. So let's build it right before it's built. Let's think about what it means to design and curate an innovation and entrepreneurial hub that is inclusive and progressive in its politics around gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity. We know that a lot of these spaces have turned into hotbeds of really awful behavior. GitHub comes to mind, for example. And we know we can undo that. We have the research, we have the expertise, we have the time and the space, but most importantly, we have the will, we have the ethical leadership to build ethical citizenship. So we need more men in these classrooms. I taught a course on gender and leadership. 3 men, 1 of them straight. Where were they? Why were all of these women in engineering and Haskell coming to me and asking if they could audit the course? And none of the men were. What are we doing if we aren't having the full conversation? So the university can model that complete conversation. We've got to square the circle.
Thank you. I have a question here for Dawn, and this person says that some of the systemic issues that they've witnessed is that men promote men. And as a CEO, how do you avoid that potential blind spot?
Yeah, so I would say as a CEO, you have to have systems and processes in place to make sure that people don't just promote themselves, promote like-minded people, and promote their friends. Because then you get little gaggles of people that are friends that cause all sorts of problems in the organization, and the roles aren't exacted the way they need to be. So you have to put in, and it's really hard because you put a process in place, and if you turn your head for a moment, you take one extra business trip that week, it's gone. You know, you look and go, how did that happen? But what we try to do is you have a system of identifying who your high potential people are when they're 25. You have a system of then saying, okay, as we're going through promotions, who's the candidate slate? You make sure that if people are out looking if we're going to hire somebody externally for a position, that headhunters bring you 50% women and 50% men. And then you just count numbers. And so people say, oh, targets, they're not real. I'm going, yeah, forget it. The reality is you just look at your numbers over and over and go, how is it that we can have 50, we're 30% women on our board, 40% on our management team, senior management team, and we're 20% at the director level and 10% at the manager level. What's going on there? So you just have to consistently do it. The other thing that I do is every 2 years, I get my HR person to line me up all the salaries of all the people in like jobs. And then I look to see where the women are, and they're always at the bottom. and then I give them raises. And now, what I have to say to the women, all of you, is start negotiating for your salaries and quit, being sorry for the fact that you should make more money. The guys will not accept the money that you'll accept. The guys would, they come into the organizations higher than you do, and they really, really stand up for themselves. And it's taken me 32 years to do that for myself, and I have taken nothing but crap for that, because why would a woman want to be paid as much as a man? But the reality is you have to negotiate for yourself. So I don't think my generation of women has helped you. We haven't really set a good bar for that. But I do make sure that women are equal pay in our organization.
It's interesting how equal pay is somehow a controversial or revolutionary topic in this day and age. I have a question here for Manjeet, and it has to do with being a woman of color. And has that impacted your career aspirations, the way that you have been treated? And I think when we, from a research perspective, look at the stats between the promotion and the advancement of women of color, it's even a more stark disparity. And so how have you navigated that, and how do you model for others that are following your lead?
Yeah, unfortunately, even in this day and age, in the last 15 years, thankfully, though, not to my face, but behind my back, I've been called every name that you can imagine. That's racist and not, from being, my family being a part of the mafia. That's why we're in the beer business, and so many other things. The names that I've been called, my brother and I both, not only by our competitors, but yeah, it was quite disheartening to begin with. And many times I had more than a couple tears for sure. What I discovered, though, is that, listen, I am going to stand out no matter what. When I sit on the table, when I'm on TV, when I'm in a meeting, I'm going to stand out, not only because I'm a woman, because I'm young. I started in this business when I was 20, but because I'm a minority. And so I have three things that are going to stand out no matter what. So I discovered that, you know what, if I'm going to stand out, I better stand out for the right reasons. I'm walking in, already people paying attention for the good or bad reason, and let's make that a good reason. So anybody who ever deals with me will tell you that I am always the best researched. I am always the most punctual. I am always the best prepared for any meeting, whether it's my project, whether it's my topic, or not. So talk about our industry, and I will tell you every single stat before I show up in the meeting, whether it's my company or not. And so I discovered that I need to be the best prepared and have the most confidence, and that's how I built my personal confidence. And I still do to this day, by being the best prepared. And I even, lots of times, I'm giving my brother the notes before we walk in. And so I really do believe that it's not easy, though, for sure. In order to do that, I spend many late nights researching and getting my, I don't let anybody else to this day still prepare my presentations because I want to know every single word that's in there. And so, it has not been easy, but I think it's been good for me that it hasn't been easy. It's made me rise to the challenge. When I get up to prove everybody wrong every single day, I still feel. So it's really put a fire underneath me, I think. And unfortunately, those things, racism, ageism still exist. You should see how many meetings I go to that people still call me a girl, or people, the men especially, babe, and all these stupid things that it still happens, unfortunately, so much more often than you would expect it to happen. In the beginning, it used to get to me, but now I just correct them and move on, and I don't let it get to me. But I do realize, and I think I would be naive and dumb to realize that it doesn't still happen, and people might be still thinking those things. But like I said, I try to stand out for the right reasons now.
Dawn, I'd invite your feedback on that.
I'd just like to add, I think people have this perception that leadership is something that's given to you, and it's not. Leadership is something that you take. It's something that you step into the moment and do. And I do fundamentally believe, after 32 years of watching people try to lead in organizations, that I do believe that diversity is an absolute advantage. I think it's an advantage that you're a woman and that you're a woman of color and that you're an entrepreneur and there's like 12 of them in the whole world. I think it's an absolute advantage because I think you, when you come from a place where it isn't given to you and you have to fight for it, you find out who you are. And if you fight for it, you'll get it. And when we try to give people opportunities, when we grant them opportunities, they typically blow them. It's our fighters that get further. So as much as I want the world to all, I agree with you that we need the right framework. But if what people think is, oh, the right framework is where I get what I want just because I said I wanted it, not going to happen. The right conditions are that you have a chance to fight. And so my view is it's been a huge advantage for me to be a person who didn't really know that I wasn't invited to the table but really wanted to be there. And I think that's just something I wanted to say.
So I want to thank you all for your inspirational, motivating, powerful comments, words of wisdom and advice throughout the course of the last hour. If the audience here takes away one thing, what would it be from each of you? Rebecca?
Oh, everything. No. I think the number one thing you need to take away is if there's any kind of balance you can find, stop thinking about it in terms of work life. That puts your personal life and your professional life in conflict with each other. They're not. Be an integrated, authentic human being and take your opportunities. Be aware of the realities and take the opportunities. And yeah, maybe do your homework late at night too, because that will give you the armor you need to sit at that table and not move.
Yeah, mine would be just never lose your confidence. Just never lose your confidence. Do what you want to do. You can do it, and be confident, and then be like Manjeet.
And Dawn. For me, it would be, I guess, find your passion. Really, it's all about that because I'm sure for all of us, I spend much more than 70%, I think that's the number, but of my waking hours working, and I love it, and I don't find it to be work. My dad said this to me when I was a young kid, and I used to think he's crazy, but now as an adult, I really do believe, and I'm sure you've all heard the Confucius saying, find a job you love and you'll never have to work a day in your life. It's true. So to me, it's find your passion and dream big. Just dream, and you'll get there.
Well, on behalf of the University of Calgary and our Alumni Weekend, I want to profusely thank you for contributing to this very important critical dialogue. We can keep the conversation going on Twitter and Facebook by tagging UCalgary Alumni in your various posts. Enjoy the rest of Alumni Weekend, and thank you for being with us here today.